if you're being your authentic self, you're never going to be liked by everyone, and what you do and what you say may not be for everyone, but that it's better to be passionately loved by the people who like you for the right reasons than it is to be inoffensive and acceptable to everyone.
I mean, why diminish yourself? Why diminish your personality? Why diminish your opinions? And, no one likes every flavor of ice cream, but people can still like ice cream and they can still try your flavor, and you never know. But obsessing about whether or not yours is the best is such a waste of time.
And nobody likes ice cream that's just inhibited.
What does it take to put your life's work out there in a really big way? How much can I do with this one precious life? Welcome to The Selfish Gift.
My guest today is a media trailblazer who has opened the door for countless people to share their gift by starting a podcast. Jessica Kupferman is one of the earliest female podcasters and a huge and vocal champion of women and non-binary folks in podcasting. She's the CEO and co-founder of She Podcasts, and she's also the co-host of She Podcasts, the podcast. She's also the creator of She Podcast Live, which is a super cool conference for women and folks of marginalized gender who want to raise their podcasting game. And as if that wasn't enough, she recently launched the Sonic Bloom Awards, which recognizes excellence in women in podcasting, including trans women and non-binary folks. Jessica is here to share her best tips for starting and growing a podcast, why she started, her whole kind of backstory, the nitty-gritty behind the scenes, and what to expect at She Podcast Live. So, Jessica, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So first things first, I want to ask you, where's Elsie right now at this minute? Are you guys like friends in real life, and do you hang out, or do you actually like never see each other outside of the podcast?
Well, actually, yes to all. We are friends in real life. We do hang out, but we very rarely see each other outside of the podcast. She lives in North Carolina in the mountains, like way up in the mountains, and I'm in Wilmington, Delaware. And we don't hang out certainly as much as I would like. She's not really that big of a fan of travel, but we talk, we text each other constantly. We're best friends. She's like my soul sister.
Well,
but,
I guess I'm glad to hear that, but also, I was hoping that there might be some sort of like big drama behind the scenes there, because, when you have like two co-hosts, people assume that co-hosts are really close friends, but it's not always the case, right?
Not always. And we have some things in common, but not everything in common. Like I like to say, she's like a mountain dwelling, homeschooling, like Whole Foods eating hippie. And I'm like a, Jewish princess from the East Coast, suburb dwelling, my kid goes to private school. Like we're just different in that way, but we are both obsessed with tech stuff and glitter and all things color and stuff like that. We're similar age. But she she hates pop culture. I know everything about movies and television. We do not have any music things in common. She's an immigrant from El Salvador, and my parent, I'm like third removed immigrant at this point, like third or fourth generation. What I love
about that is that it's actually like your differences create so much rich chemistry between the two of you on your show, because you're not afraid to disagree with each other. And that's why it's almost like, wow, is she actually mad at her right now, or is she just getting super passionate about her point?
I'm never mad at her. Never. Even if I'm annoyed with her, I'm never really mad at her. I mean, the biggest amount of drama I would say is that so like I said, I'm third, fourth generation here, but I'm also like fourth generation entrepreneur here. Like my dad, my grandfather, my great grandfather, they all had businesses here. Whereas like Elsie, she came here when she was 8 from El Salvador, and she goes back a long way, but like as a working, person with a job. So like she's wildly uncomfortable with the idea of entrepreneurship. And when we started doing the event, she's like, the idea of being responsible for money or other people's jobs, like it just totally stresses her out. So we have, once She Podcast became more of a business, I wouldn't say that we split up, but I'm definitely more business minded, and her head is more on like, how do we serve the community? So it still works out, but yeah, we don't work together as much as one would think.
That's amazing. So interesting to hear. Yeah. And you do have to have complementary strengths when you're getting into bed with somebody on a huge, long-term, forever project. But one thing I know that you both have in common and that I share with you, is that you're feminists and you're giant believers in, women and non-binary folks having a voice. So let me ask you this question. Okay. Serious tone. Why do you think we need our own special space and networks and groups and conferences, et cetera? Why can't we just be podcasters? And will that day ever come?
I don't know. Like, I did so I was an online graphic and web designer, and I used to teach, and then I became social media consultant. And then when I became a podcaster, people naturally asked me to teach them the stuff I'm doing. So I did a podcasting course about 10 years ago, and I had like 4 or 5 really specific reasons why the course was necessary. Like, women, I think, are intimidated by podcasting because A, they aren't sure that they have anything relevant to say. B, they're not sure they have the time to dedicate to it. C, they're not sure they understand the tech well enough to dedicate to it. And those are the 3 things, and D, I think, is that they're afraid of being heard, judged, criticized, called out. And that's even more of a fear now than it was 10 years ago. So I wouldn't say that we need, I don't know that there'll ever be a time where we don't need this type of space, because the space is less about those things and more about the fact that, like, in mixed company, women can feel even more intimidated and timid to say or ask for the things that they need. Whereas, like, if it's just a women's group or women and non-binary podcasters, they feel much more comfortable admitting their failures, asking for specific advice on what they're struggling with, because they don't want to be seen as being stupid or non-technical. And oftentimes we get those answers that make us feel stupid and non-technical. Like, well, obviously you just need a mixer to do blah, blah, blah. Or if you were doing it this way and not in your basement, then blah, blah, blah. And women just frankly don't need that crap. Like, we are doing enough, and if it fits into our lives this specific way, who are you to say, that it shouldn't? So that's mainly why I think the group goes and grows the way it does. So I don't know that there'll ever be a time where we don't need that space. It's just
and it's really similar. Groups for women in business. It's the same kind of thing. It's not that we it's not that we can only learn in sort of those kinds of safe spaces, but that it's while we're still trying to level the playing field, it's really important to kind of knock those dominoes down for as many folks as possible to kind of get into the game. I use dominoes and game. I mix my metaphor. Maybe it's a game of dominoes. Okay.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about, like, why does this matter to you? Why do you care that more women's voices or marginalized voices get to be heard?
Well, I think,
like, you personally, why does this matter to you in your heart?
I've never had a problem being heard. I make myself heard. I'm not extroverted, but I am loud and outspoken and bossy. And, Elsie's not, she's the type of person that was mostly told her whole life that she should sit down and be quiet. And there are so many women who feel that way, even if they weren't told that. And I find that when I find out what other women are podcasting about, so if I just like post in the group, like, what's your show about? It is always a needed topic, serious, not always serious, but they almost, more often than not, it is a topic that will help other people in some way. Even the comedians are like, if I can just make someone laugh in this terrible time, then, that's what I want to do. So it makes me feel like I'm supporting something that's really helping and changing the world, not something frivolous, not something, barely thought of. But all of the shows of the women that I meet are really important conversations that need to be had. I've very rarely met someone who wasn't doing that. So
yeah, there's a lot of service-driven or mission-driven material being produced by women. And by the way, I'm a book publisher. I find that on the book publishing side as well. And less about kind of like ego aggrandizement.
Almost never, in fact.
Yeah.
About ego.
So take me back to the first moment that you decided to start your podcast. And this was like way back in the way back years of
2013.
2013. Wait a second. That's 10 years ago. This is your 10-year anniversary.
For my first podcast. Yeah. I mean, She Podcast started like the following summer.
Okay.
In 2014. So we're almost 10 years. But yeah, my show started in 2013.
Okay. So talk to me about that. What made you decide to get into this space?
Ego, power, and glory. Actually, I wanted to. So this is how I met Elsie. I was in an online business group for women who wanted to take their business and sort of make it more international, global. We wanted to do, instead of local businesses, a one-to-many type situation. And it was about 300 women in the class. Elsie was one of them. And one of those women asked me to be on her podcast, which was on Blog Talk Radio, which was something else altogether. But so I went on the show, and it was almost like she was like Jimmy Fallon. Like, she had her own like nighttime talk show, and I just like fell in love with it. When I was a kid, I used to pretend to have my own game show and stuff. Like, I always wanted to have my own talk show. So I was,
that's cool.
Yeah.
I used to play secretary. So we had,
you did? That's so cute. I was instantly enamored by the platform and the fact that I could be like, hey, ladies and gentlemen, it's Jessica, so I instantly wanted to start one. And first, actually, I wanted to be on more. And I looked online at other business. I'm like, where are the women in business shows? And guess what? There were none. No. The only woman I think who was podcasting about business at the time was Amy Porterfield. But even she was still, they were all sort of like interviewing each other, like John Lee Dumas, Lewis Howes, David Siteman Garth. They all had business shows, but they all just kept rotating out on each other's podcasts. So I was like, there's no way any of these people are going to ever want to interview me, because they don't know me and they clearly only interview each other. So then I was like, you know what? I mean, I know a lot of women that have fascinating stories. Like, why do we have to hear from the same people over and over again? I will just start the show, and I will expose these stories, and I will make sure that people know what real women go through when they're having their own business. And so I think I did like 180 episodes, and I interviewed women who are on book tours while they have small kids at home, and people who, who took their, putting themselves through school as a stripper to learn how to be like a sales mastermind, and wrote a book about that, and all kinds of different and interesting women who are just like doing things their own way, like without any kind of rules or online marketing. At the time there was like this, like sort of like an online marketing rule book, and these women didn't necessarily follow it. So I just wanted to share their stories. And rather than be on other people's shows, like the power and glory just of having your own show was way past being on other people's shows. So it just worked out great, because I absolutely loved having my own thing to run. It gives you like instant clout when you're like, I have a podcast and I interview people. Like, people are instantly impressed. They have no idea what little or big goes into it. So
I love that.
I love
that. It's just the guts to start and then the follow through.
It was more like an obsession.
Trying to follow through.
Yeah, it was an obsession. As soon as I figured this out, I had it up and done in 2 weeks. I had a website, I had branding. I mean, it was like I couldn't stop thinking about it. I dumped everything else I was doing.
Oh my God. Okay. So now fast forward 10 years, it's not just a podcast. It's so many things, notably, a community. You've got an amazing community, and you do courses, and there's a membership, and so many pieces to it. You've got, She Podcast Live, which is, a conference, a live event. And that's happening this June in DC. And we're going to find out more about that later on in the conversation. But one of the things that I want to drill into and ask you about is that you said that you're setting up the first female, is it the first female owned or first female focused podcast network? Can you tell me what even a podcast network is? Okay. Well, what is a podcast network versus like a community, which is a network of people? Like, what does that really mean in technical terms?
Yeah. So let me back up just a minute and tell you, like, my first podcast was Lady Business Radio. And then we didn't actually start She Podcast for 6 months after that. I met Elsie in person at a different event and about 6 or 7 other women podcasters. And I just valued the answers to my questions that they were giving me so much more than like the general, than the speakers I was listening to. So I shoved them all in a little group. And then Elsie was like, oh, can I add some more people? And like, before I knew it, there was 100 people, and now there's 21,000 women in that group. But at the time I had just created it for my own personal, like, little hive mind of people I felt comfortable asking questions to. And then as it grew, years later, people started saying like, hey, maybe we should have our own conference, because Podcast Movement had started, Podfest had started, and just never felt like enough time to spend with the people who were really giving you value. The people who you wanted to spend time with, that were really like impacting how you were doing things. So that's why we started the event and the other things. The network. So the network is an interesting story. Like Are you familiar with human design at all?
Yeah, it's kind of like
like astrology, and
kind of like
chakras.
Astrology and numerology, but basically it's one of those things that tells you, oh, you're one of these, and these are the qualities of a person like that. Yeah. So what are you? I'm a generator.
Yeah, I'm a projector, which they're more rare. So a projector is someone who, in order to be successful, they have to wait to be invited to do things. We're sort of like these like all knowers, like old souls, I guess is another way of describing it. But we can't, anything we try to do and hustle, that's what generators and manifesting generators are for. We have to sit and wait for someone to invite us to do something in order for it to really work, which as an impatient woman, that's very difficult. But then when I learned about human design, I was like, gosh, I mean, that really is how my whole entire career has gone. Like I started, design, and then people were like, how do you do web design? And I was like, here, let me show you. How do you do podcasting? Here, let me show you. So people were in about 2017, 2015, 16, 17, they were asking how to get sponsors, because I had sponsors on my shows and people could not figure out why. And it's because one of my first jobs was selling digital advertising to print advertisers for our local newspaper. So I learned how to bundle things together. And so I would bundle our social with our downloads. And so I started teaching people how to do that. And then they were like, well, why don't you, could you do it for us? So I was like, yeah, sure. Why not? So I started a podcast ad agency where I was a broker. And then I sold the agency in 2018. I had some personal stuff happen and I couldn't focus on it the way I wanted to. So I sold her my book. And then this last year, like within 3 days, I had, or maybe it was like a week, it was at another conference. And like that week I had 2 or 3 people ask me about starting a network. And I was like, well, this is how things start. So, tell me all about it. And so it was Megaphone. They were like, well, here, this is what you do. You put people in your umbrella and then you sell, people will buy across the network. And they were saying that they have a really strong need for female content right now. All the advertisers are looking for that target audience. And so would you be interested in starting a Megaphone? And here's what we'll give you. And yeah, I was super interested because before when I was a broker, it wasn't under any umbrella. I was having to log into like 100 shows, find out what their downloads were, find out what their numbers were that month. And then, every month I'd have to refresh and sell what I had. Whereas there's now a platform where I can see everything at once, because they do have to host under me. But when you have a network on Megaphone, you can see every show, the target demographic, what inventory is free. I had to keep a master calendar in like a project management system for me to keep track of every show and who had space where. This just does it for you. Their platform just does it for you so easily. So a network.
Okay. So this is dawning on me. So it's kind of like, it's like the NBC, but of podcasts. So it's literally like, these are all these shows.
Exactly.
So it's a thing that links our show together in one brand, in one,
you're selling
umbrella.
You're selling your book. At the time, back then, a network was just a website where people were like, we support these, it wasn't anything like selling across a network, at least not that I could tell. Whereas this is purely advertising purposes. Like the LinkedIn network, though, I'm sure they all get paid by LinkedIn, but there are some networks where, like, for example, I think there used to be like a board game network where there are different podcasts about different board games. They each had their own website, which is fine.
That way the advertiser can sell to somebody. So they can sell because what ties the network together is audience. Is that right? So there's sort of like, okay, well, we know that these audiences are going to be interested in this kind of ad or that kind of ad?
Yes. So that's why they banded together.
What would be the benefit to me of joining that network? It would be that there's a way for me to to get paid. You're selling ads on my behalf, and they're putting those ads on all the folks in all the podcasts in our network. Is that how it works?
Yeah. So the idea would be you come on the network, and then I have a salesperson that already has the connections with BetterHelp, Casper, whoever.
Right.
And they're already buying across the board, or they're buying certain target markets. So we would just add your downloads to our network, and then, you just do what you do. And then if you get a campaign or someone interested, you can, say yes or no to it. And then we give you the materials, and then you do the ad. And then, our campaign manager will look and see when it was done, see how many downloads. We would sell the ad for you. We pitch your show for you. We manage the campaign as far as like sending the advertiser a report to see how it was done. We collect the money, we pay you out, and we take a small percentage. That's basically how it works. Yeah. And
so
target audience, yes, but also, it's also really about like, the other thing that's a benefit is being able to, if you have free inventory, for example, if you're new, and someone else has free inventory, you could I could put a promo for my show on your show, because you just have these like dynamic insertion spaces. You pre-decide where they're going to go. So like, say I want one 10 minutes in.
Yeah.
It's just empty space unless Casper Mattress has an ad that week. So if it's empty, I can take any other show and put their ad in there and help grow the network, like
That's
myself,
awesome.
for everyone's benefit.
And this is not live yet, or where are you at in the stage of the process of setting it up?
So yeah, it's not live yet. It is, I have 4 shows on it. I have a long list of people that I wanted to invite and see if they were interested.
Put me on your consideration list.
Are you ready?
That sounds awesome.
I will.
Totally. But yeah, man, that sounds amazing.
I absolutely will. Yeah. I don't know that. Absolutely. And we want to, have as many shows as possible, for sure. It's just because I'm doing the event and these other things, it's just like the launch is a little slower than I'm used to. Like I said, I started my first show in 2 weeks. I started my agency within like a week last time I did it. So this time it's just like, is the website ready? Is the onboarding kit ready? Is the platform ready? Is the email ready? It's a lot more and a lot more people, because I'm not by myself. So I have a lot more people to sort of like, I don't want to say manage, but there's lots of more moving pieces, the more people that work with you. So
it's a lot.
It's
girl,
almost
it like you keep on adding stuff to your plate. So
I know I lost my mind completely and totally lost my mind, because we are also just signed, and got a new 501c3. So we just started a charity this week, to help us empower even more women by, hopefully getting grants and and funding for people to come to the event free if they can't afford it, or, it just depends on what we get. But we sort of hurried that process as we're going through and getting lots of sponsors right now, because we're hoping that they'll be able to scholarship some people who can't come.
That's amazing. What a fantastic thing. Yeah. Okay. So I really want to get into the nitty gritty of your process.
I know I threw you off with that one.
No,
I'm sorry.
It's like,
sorry.
Are you kidding? That's gold. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I super want to join. Okay. But now that you're closing in on your 400th episode, like what are you at now?
I know.
390.
Today we recorded 393.
Oh,
so yeah, it's like,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's spitting distance away. You're closing in on your 400th.
Yeah.
I'd love to know, has your focus shifted over the years? And like, do you ever run out of topic? I know that because of your format, it's like you and Elsie bantering. It's a lot of banter. There's always a little bit about podcasting in there, but you talk about everything. Is there any topic that's kind of like, no, that's not really relevant? How do you decide what to talk about?
So we have a Kanban board in Notion where we used to each put articles and stuff that we wanted to discuss. And then when it comes time to record, we just sort of go down the list, rearrange what we want to talk about first. And it's like sort of a known thing. I don't put stuff on it as much as I used to. She's usually, because she works for Libsyn, she's got a much more, she has the in on stuff that's happening in the industry. And even though I love our community, I'm not as interested in what's going on with the industry as much as I am with the community and the people that I'm supporting. She has her pulse on what's happening overall. So we end up talking about podcasting. But like today we spent like 20 minutes talking about the fact that I can't get my 8-year-old to sleep in his own bed. Cause that's a long time because I'm exhausted and I'm, and then, we got to talk about like how he's got separation anxiety because her kids had the same thing. And lots of kids his age are actually having the same problem probably because of the pandemic. And it's a whole thing. But then we started talking about the infinite dial. There was a research series that just came out that Edison Research did about the podcast consumer. And we spent the other half hour talking about that. So people who listen to our show can sort of like, ping pong into and out of what they want, but we're never going to run out of topics as long as we're alive, I think, because, it goes everything from like who Spotify's firing to like what facial hair we're trying to get rid of, like, and everything in between. So.
And it does help, I'm sure, that you guys are so complementary in terms of your natural attributes. Okay. Another question about Elsie in that case.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, what I want to, and it's about her, not her specifically, but about co-hosting. Because I know that a lot of folks, when they're setting up their podcast, they're like, what should my format be? Should I have a co-host? I mean, it's kind of like getting into a marriage, or it is getting into a business partnership. What advice do you have for people who are trying to decide whether to co-host with a certain person to know if that's the right mix? Like, should you be different? Should you be similar? Should you be close friends? Should you be like, and how can you tell if this is a good match?
I have attempted to co-host with people that just fizzled out for whatever reason, close friends, cousins, stuff like that. Elsie and I were not best friends when we started our show. We were acquaintances from that class I told you about. That class also taught us, that as we were working with each other to respect each other's time and prices and things like that. So we had a mutual respect for one another. And in addition, things that we were both good at. So, she's not interested in doing design. And, like I said, she had an idea of what she wanted to talk about on the show. She invited me to do the podcast, not the other way around. So
and we know that you need that invitation.
Yeah, I do.
Your human design.
That's right. I do. I didn't even think of that, but you're right. She invited, oh my God. See what I mean? It's insane. But, she invited me to do the show. I was very flattered and I hoped that I would just, be able to add something because I'm not an audio person. I have no background in audio. I'm a marketing person. So, we did compliment each other. Also, I'm very opinionated, which I think helps her because she knows that I'll give her banter.
So is she. You guys are both opinionated, and that's what I think that's what people love. If you were both kind of trying to be nice and go like, like agree to disagree, like that just wouldn't be no fun to listen to.
I mean, but I've pushed her on the show. Like, I remember the first time I pushed her opinion about something. I mean, I could be wrong. I'd have to listen back, but we were supposed to go to a conference and she was invited to be on a panel with like some big players. And she instead was trying to decide whether or not she should go home early because her partner was maybe having a hard time wrangling her kids. And I was like, I accused her of playing small. That was the first time I confronted her on air about something. And like, I mean, but the way that we talked through it was like, beautiful. I think I think it established like the baseline of our friendship, which is neither one of it, I wasn't trying to be insulting. Mm-hmm. Clearly I was trying to support her and give her everything she deserves. And in return, she considered whether or not she was doing that. And then she gave me legitimate reasons as to why one thing was more important than the other. And you can hear over the course of 9 years how we've been able to challenge and then accept each other for exactly who we are without trying to, she'll explain so that I understand. I don't have to agree or even advise, and I've even been like, you're just making things so much harder for yourself, but she always has a good reason why she does stuff. And so, and if you respect someone again before you're best friends, you don't have that like, what the hell are you doing? Like, I think with a good friend, it's too easy to ridicule them or make them feel small or talk about things that you knew about them when they were 10 years old. Like Elsie and I don't have any of that.
Right. All that kind of like inside baseball kind of, inside jokes and stuff that just don't play to an audience.
Yeah. And actually, I think that's why so many comedy shows with you in your basement talking to your friends kind of goes awry because no one else is going to know what the heck you're talking about.
Right.
Whereas for she and I, we have to explain what we're doing now, why we came to this decision, what happened as a kid that brought us, we're learning about each other as we're podcasting. So, it actually worked out much better than it was probably possibly should have because we're so different.
Okay. So you've talked to me about your Kanban board. I know that it's mostly Elsie populating it. You just
at the moment, yeah.
Do you just like show up and wing it?
Always.
What else do you guys do to prepare? Like how much time goes into each episode?
So she naturally, I think, reads lots of blogs and stuff. She puts a bunch of stuff up, and then, we kind of decide what interests me and what doesn't. Like we've also gone through.
We decide what interests me.
What interests me. Because you know what? Because again, because we've been doing it a long time. Like there was one time where we were just recording la-di-da like we always do. And all of a sudden she was like rushing me to stop. She's like, all right, well, it's time for us to, and I'm like, there's 4 more things on the list. What do you mean? What do you mean? And again, we're on air and I'm like, she's like, no, I think it's time for us to wrap up. I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, according to her, she had decided without communicating it that we should have an hour show and be done after an hour. But she didn't say a word before the show or anything. She just started like, after 2 or 3 times, I'm like, what is happening exactly? Are we ending the show now? Why are we? And she was like, oh, did I not say that out loud to you? And I'm like, no, you didn't. A little heads up would be cool.
That's funny. I was actually going to ask you about that because I noticed that your podcast, your episodes are not necessarily uniform in length. Some of them are over an hour and some of them are closer to like 30 minutes. But so do you really just organically let the conversation guide the length? And is that best?
It's changed. It's not best. I mean, we've changed over the years. I was going to say like, she used to put in a lot of articles about Spotify and again, like what they were doing, what they were acquiring. There was a period of time where everyone was buying everything else. And I was just like, our listeners do not care.
So she was doing like industry news and it was too high level. And it was like,
I thought it was not interesting to them. I didn't do a survey or anything, but I was like, they don't care.
It was not interesting to you.
They're just trying to, I'm interested, but I'm interested, but I don't, it's not relevant to our audience.
Yeah,
it's like what they're doing or not doing. It's like talking about, to use your example, it's like when we're YouTubers talking about what's happening on NBC, like no one cares.
Yeah.
So, but that's something again that we hashed out on air.
And you are standing in for the listener, right? For the, you're putting yourself in the position of like, I don't think this is going to be interesting. And hey, by the way, I'm not engaged in this conversation.
Right.
Like I'd much rather talk about the facial hair.
Right. And sometimes, we have 4 things that we want to get done and we get stuck on one and then we just say, forget the others. Like, ChatGPT, we spent a lot of time on a couple weeks ago and that wasn't even, it was just one little thing that said, let's talk ChatGPT. There's 5 things ahead of it, but she decided to move it up. And then we spent the rest of the time talking about it because it's so new and interesting.
Yeah.
So it's just loose. She likes to have a script. She likes everything to be planned. She stumbles over her word. Even though she's got a master's in theater and performance arts, like because she's an immigrant, like when she says stuff, it gets jambalaya up sometimes. She likes when things are written out so that she knows what to expect. Whereas like, I'm the opposite. If I've written something out, it will trip me up every time. I keep looking at it, obsessing over it. And then I'll be like, wait, what are we doing? Wait, I get like all caught up in the semantics of it. So better for her to just put the topic in and then let it go where it goes. Like, I guess over 9 years, she's realized that like trying to plan anything with me is sort of a nightmare, is what I'm saying. I cannot work that way.
So that's your prep. And then what about afterward? How much, tell me about the process of like, I don't know, editing the show or processing it or getting it. Do you have helpers? Who does it? How long does it take? Tell me about the practicalities of that side of things.
So one of our teammates at She Podcast so we do a live recording on StreamYard. It blasts out to LinkedIn and YouTube and Facebook, and someone watches and takes, notes as we're talking. And then she goes back through and sees if she has to add any like, filler or explanation as to what she wrote down. The audio, we each record, we do what's called a double ender where I record my side in Audition. She records her side in Audition, and StreamYard recording is a backup. So we send our recordings to our editor who marries them together to make it sound like we're in the same room. And then everything is given to the note taker, Melissa, she's like my director of operations, but everything's given to Melissa by Thursday, and then she publishes it for us on Friday.
So does that mean that's really interesting? So you're broadcasting live, but it's also getting captured as 2 separate audio tracks, and that gives you the opportunity to cut and slice and dice and take out stuff. Or did you say that
and mix our levels properly?
Do you sometimes have to add stuff? Would you kind of go in and record a little explanation and then sort of seamlessly edit that in,
No, we've never added. I mean, if we do, like, there are times when we're in the middle of the conversation and we go, John, can you just edit that part out and let me start from this part, and then I'll start talking again, even though it's live. I mean, the point for us of streaming it live is so that people can see the behind the scenes, which isn't perfect.
Yeah,
that we go live and then we start talking about what's on the list, and then sometimes I'll forget to start, or like they get to see like the bloopers of us hanging up or getting started, or when I say something wrong, or like tonight, like earlier today, I was saying we're on all the socials and I said Pinstatalk of all things. Like I was trying to say Pinterest, Instagram, and TikTok. And I said, I've never done that before. I don't usually trip, which is why I'm the one that says goodbye, and hello and goodbye.
Right.
So that was new, but yeah, they get to see all that, and then he'll go back in and fix it.
Okay,
later.
I've never watched the live, so now I need to.
It's Mondays. Yeah, it's Mondays at 1 p.m. EST. So you guys can catch us. I think the safest is YouTube. It's always on YouTube. It's not always on our page. Sometimes it's in the group, sometimes it's in the page. But
okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about what you're getting out of this experience, and because this show is really all about how the gift that you share with the world is also the way to get the most out of your own life and reap the rewards that you're looking for. So, what do you get at besides the warm and fuzzies? Talk to me. I mean, I guess what I'm hinting at here is income. Are you making money? When did you start making money? How much money, if you're willing to share? Talk to me about what you're getting out of it.
So it's a bit of a hairy topic because She Podcast was not even a business until like 2019. When we started doing the conference, that's when I had to get a business bank account and those type, and an EIN. Before then, we would do workshops or have Patreon. It would go into like a She Podcast PayPal, and we would just split it. But with an event, you can't really do that. You kind of have, you need checks to be written to a specific. So we had to start a business then. And that year the event did make money, but it was like 4 months before the pandemic. So it did make money. And then there was a pandemic. And then the second one, we lost money. And so this is now the third one. And I'm hoping that it will be back to making money again. But it hasn't, because it has been a business for too long, and because the only product was the event, I can't say that it's been as lucrative of a job as I'd have liked.
Yeah, that's coming, right? That's coming.
But that's part of the reason why the network is so that that advertising money can help fund the other things we're going to do, and also the the 501c3 will be able to. It's a separate charity, so it's not a She Podcast charity. It's called the Empowered Voice Initiative, and that charity will be able to help companies like mine, but also events like Afros and Audio Festival and International Women's award shows and things that we believe in. We're going to be able to like fundraise for stuff that we want to support, not just what we're doing. But so I mean, that will hopefully turn into a little bit more of a, I don't want to say empire, but what's the right,
just say it. Yes.
It's really, it's just like a group that, like a conglomerate of services and entities that can help push underrepresented voices into the spotlight.
Okay. And it's a media empire.
It's sort of a media empire. As far as what I'm getting out of it at the moment, no, it hasn't been lucrative, but imagine the CEO lessons that you've learned through a pandemic and trying to make money through that, and then having staff, and then having no income and still having staff, and then it's been a lot of big decisions, and it has really pushed me to be much more of a leader faster than I thought. And not that I wasn't ready, but just that I wasn't expecting She Podcast to grow as big as it did, as fast as it did. But it has worked out quite well, I think. And it's given me a really good idea of the stuff I'm good at and the stuff I'm not good at, and the things that I need other people to do for me. And, it has, being a CEO, I understand now why people do a lot of inner work as a CEO, because it really does test your confidence and your strength and your stamina as far as like mentally what you can handle. So in the last year, I've been doing lots of that, like emotional processing work and therapy and stuff like that, just to make sure that I am at my best when I'm making decisions, because they're no longer just decisions about me and my income, but there's other people that work for us. And I want to be as sharp as I can when I make moves, I guess.
It's so important. Well, so I'm triply impressed that you folks like stuck with it as long as you did through, I know that you're mission driven and you have been from the start, but knowing that it wasn't like this big kind of cash cow that you were sitting on, it didn't really start to pay off until more recently. But I'm a huge believer that women should not apologize for their ambition, and that doing mission driven work is not necessarily in opposition to wild financial success. Like you can have both, and in fact, we need both. We need both. Because the financial success enables us to just grow our empires and do more good in the world, and also get out of it what we have put in. So all of that's incredible. But you have other products too, right? You sell a course or you have a membership fee.
We have a membership right now. Yeah, we have a membership, and in it is a library of webinars, articles, templates, checklists, and all kinds of lessons on podcasting for women who want to learn from people that they trust, and to learn how Elsie and I specifically do stuff, and have a small group of people that, are supporting them. We do QA every week. Like Elsie or I do like an hour where they can just come in and ask any questions they want. And then we also partnered with Produce Your Podcast, Tracy DeForge, who does the same thing. She does Q&As on Thursday. So they have 2 hours of one-on-one coaching if they want every week. Plus our library's got like hundreds of stuff in it, hundreds of things that we've.
And I know that I think you said that Elsie is the one who's more kind of like in communication with the community. Is that right? But
she's
What do you know about some things must have filtered back to you? Like what are you aware of that is your sort of community members' like biggest hurdle or fear or stumbling block on their podcasting journey? And how do you help them over it?
I mean, the thing that I know, the thing that's probably discussed the most in the group is growth. I think that they are, and probably all podcasters are very frustrated with discoverability, how they're supposed to get people to listen, what it's all, it gets to the point where it's like, what monkey organ what organ grinder who do I have to sleep with to get more listeners, right? Like what has to happen here in order for me to do this? And that's not always there's no definitive answer. Like for some people, it's being on podcasts. For other people, it's getting more involved with social. Depends on your show and the topic, what your audience is already doing, what they're already into. I mean, because there's a lot of shows that talk about visual topics. So clearly you should be killing it on Instagram, or if you have a younger audience, you should be on TikTok, or if you have it just depends. But growth is almost never what you're doing on your show. It's almost always something external.
You mean
that you're not doing.
It's not usually about necessarily the quality of.
Yeah. It's almost never about I mean, sometimes maybe, but it's either you're not, you don't get traffic to your site, or you're not on the right social, or you're not telling people, or you're shy about marketing, or your sales messages, and not just sales, like I'm selling a product, but sales, telling people to listen to your show is still selling your show. You
for
still
sure
have to sell it. And I think if you have a podcast about, say, fish, like fishing, you may not be an online marketing person and have no idea how to, even get started trying to get more listeners. Whereas like, because I did online marketing and those things first, it comes more naturally to me. So I'm probably better person to teach it. So most of the women in there are just podcasting about whatever, how they're supposed to know email marketing.
Yeah. It's a whole other
free downloads and stuff.
Set of skills. And it sounds like what you're saying is that there isn't necessarily one kind of like magic bullet that you can recommend. Like this is how to find listeners or grow your listenership.
Not really.
That it really depends on where your listeners are and what kind of material you're working with. And, but getting back to quality, I know that, one of the things that I love most about your podcast with Elsie is that you're both so authentically yourselves. And I think that, really showing up and letting yourself, sort of run wild is,
thank you.
And not being kind of like, I don't know, intimidated or trying to, please
be too official people, or too professional,
too polished, too perfect. So, and I really want to kind of like drill into this a little bit and hear your thoughts on it, because I know that it's a place where a lot of women in particular stumble in many areas of our lives is around this this desire or drive or need to be liked, to be accepted, and to win the approval of the person that we're in front of. Now, obviously, you do need to make your podcast a success. You do need to be making work and being, you need to be liked by them, right? So how do you not care about being liked while also literally giving your audience what they need?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because we were just talking today about how I was just like, well, you shouldn't care about what other people think. But then anytime we get a bad review or someone says something negative about me, I'm like the first one to be like, I need to explain myself. That's not true. That's not fair. Like, I do care if people don't like me or they disagree with something that I've said or done, only because I almost always have the truest of intentions. Mm-hmm. I'm not a malicious person or a greedy person or a stupid person. Therefore, I calculate a lot of what I say and do, and I try for it to be for the greater good. So if someone doesn't agree with that, it really sticks in my craw, if you will. But there's just something about a personality that is too much for people. I've had that my whole life, and podcasting is one of the few places where I feel like it's an advantage. And so why hold back? Why hold it back? If you're the person, your whole life who was like sitting in the timeout chair for talking too much or getting in trouble with your teeth, getting other people in trouble, thrown out of college classes for talking, and it's not even like talking's a hobby. It's just that I cannot keep my mouth shut. So, so I mean, some people aren't going to like that. Some people are going, and especially being opinionated or, I also have, friends used to describe me as saying the thing that other people were thinking. So I clearly don't have as good of a filter as I should also. And again, these things make great content on podcasts, like being unfiltered and, and boisterous, that all makes great audio. So
I think when I'm hearing you talk, what's coming to mind is that I think that it sounds like, if you're being your authentic self, you're never going to be liked by everyone, and what you do and what you say may not be for everyone, but that it's better to be passionately loved by the people who like you for the right reasons than it is to be inoffensive and acceptable to everyone.
Why diminish yourself? Why diminish your personality? Why diminish your opinions? And, no one likes every flavor of ice cream, but people can still like ice cream and they can still try your flavor, and you never know. But obsessing about whether or not yours is the best is such a waste of time.
And nobody likes ice cream that's just inhibited.
It's a lot about focus though, too. Like, I'm very focused. If you're focused on creating good content, like how you're perceived doesn't really come into the picture. Not saying it shouldn't, because I know that it does, but when you throw yourself into what you're doing, what people think about it is like second, it's totally irrelevant.
Did you ever have
trying to produce?
Did you ever have a kind of a moment where you felt like, oh God, I overshared, or I put myself out there too much, or I wish I could take that? Tell me about that. How did you deal with it?
Every time I'm on a podcast, I almost always write the person and apologize for talking too much on their show. And I'm the guest, but I'm still like, oh my God, I'm sorry. I hogged the whole thing. I don't know why I did that. I'm pretty self-conscious about like running over people, interrupting people and that kind of thing. So like, I have that all the time. Most of the people I'm apologizing to tell me I'm being ridiculous and not to worry about it. But I do worry about it mostly because of the relationship I'm having with you, the interviewer, not necessarily because I'm torturing your audience, but because I don't want them to feel like I'm mowing them over with my boisterous personality.
I have the same problem. If I can just butt in there and say, I have the same problem. Exactly. I interrupt people.
Do you feel that way though? When you're being interviewed, you're just like, oh my God, I took over the whole thing and they're going to think I'm an idiot. So I almost apologize just to let you know, like, yeah, it's like, hi, I'm self-aware that I'm annoying and I just want you to know that I know. So we're good. So I feel that a lot actually, but what can you do? It's, when you're a kid and you have ADHD or whatever it was that combination of all the things, like you don't know why people are not reacting to you the way you intend for them to. You're like, I was just kind of a spaz, overly excited and enthusiastic and very loud. And it's annoying for kids who are probably, sensitive to light, sound, whatever. So I had to study people's nonverbals and figure out like what they could handle and what they couldn't. Because it didn't come naturally to me. I was too busy like yelling from excitement. So,
but I love what you said about like you found a place to channel all of that genuine kind of boisterousness into
it's
like
great.
comedy gold.
Yes, absolutely.
What about oversharing or sharing really vulnerably about your son, your family, yourself? Did you ever kind of like have that come back to haunt you?
Yes, I have had it come back to haunt me. I often, especially when I was doing a comedy show, I used to joke about my in-laws all the time. And then out of nowhere, 5 years into it, one of them listened and got mad at me for saying something terrible. I mean, I can repeat it because it's not that terrible. It was totally a joke, but like we had in order to get my son, we had IVF. And we had 3 embryos, and I realized they were going to, because we did genetic testing, the doctors were going to choose what sex it was. So I was like, well, I'd like to choose what sex. So we asked, and we had 2 boys and a girl, like sort of on tap, if you will. And I know that's weird, right? But I made a joke about how we decided, since his mom and sister were crazy, we should go for a boy. Because we didn't want the genetics to go wrong there. And it was a joke, right? But they did not find it amusing. It was my mother-in-law's sister who listened to it first, who told another sister, who told her, who told the daughter, who told my husband, who told me. And I was like, if any of you fuckers ever listen to my podcast, you would already have the answer to this. But you don't, so it's not my problem. I've been talking about you fools for years. And you've never cared before.
Well,
so I don't know why it's important now.
Let's bring that objection back, because you just put that out there all over again.
It's a joke. Of course we didn't do that. I mean, of course we just did. That's just ridiculous, but it's just, it's supposed to be funny. It's in-law humor. Everyone has in-law humor.
So, Jess, I know
I live with my mother-in-law. So, I mean,
so
clearly I don't hear that much.
She knows exactly how you feel about her already.
Yes, exactly. Of course she does. Yes.
Okay. I know that we only have a few more minutes before we have to wrap.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. But I want to give you a chance to tell our listeners about She Podcast Live. What are we going to get out of going? What is it? Who is it for? Why should I go?
She Podcast Live is the content is created for women and non-binary podcasters by women and non-binary podcasters who are in really any phase of the podcasting journey. There are 6 tracks. There's a start track if you haven't started yet, a refine track for if you've started but something's not quite right, a growth track. We have an achieve track, not monetized, because some people don't want to monetize it, but they would like a new job or to speak more or whatever. And then we have a community track, which focuses on teaching people how to use their podcast for global good, for local good, to sort of, if they want to empower more women or highlight, diverse voices, et cetera. And then we have a self-care track for those who, maybe don't need the other tracks because their content and everything is all set, but they want to maybe learn how to, I don't know, like meditate beforehand. So that track usually has like EFT, meditation, yoga, conquering your fear, building up confidence, co-hosting, stuff that isn't the other, like the, what's it called? Nooks and crannies of the actual process of podcasting. We sort of wanted to go a little bit outside that. So we had something for everyone.
I love that.
It's a 3-day conference. It has an awards show the last night.
Oh God, we didn't even get to talk about, so that's the Sonic Bloom Awards. Okay. And it's inaugural year, right? So the very first Sonic Bloom Awards are going to be handed out at She Podcast Live.
Yes.
DC in June 2023. That's so exciting. I think I should come. That sounds incredible.
I think you have to come. Well, yeah, the award show, the nominations are through March 31st. I don't know when this is going to air, but it's sonicbloomawards.com. Yeah. And then the website for the event is shepodcastlive.com. We have it all. We have the days set up where, as a person who's non-male, it is, it starts a little later. There's yoga first. There's breakfast.
Oh my God.
There's some space, in between for meals and in between the presentations that we do at night and parties and stuff. It is all geared towards, not that men can't come or wouldn't enjoy it. It's just that it is meant for women, but men do come and they sponsor and they don't speak.
This is a place for female.
They speak when spoken to,
That's right,
goddammit.
that's right,
No,
that's
kidding.
right. This is a
I'm just
place
kidding.
for female and
No, I'm kidding.
non-binary voices to elevate them. And so
Yes.
that sounds incredible. Jess Kupferman, you are a delight. And I wish we had another
Thank you.
hour. I would
Me too. I'm so sorry.
No, there's more for us to dig into. We'll have to make this we'll have to do a follow-up at some point. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I've had the
Incredible.
best time talking to you. I appreciate it so much.
Oh, thank you so much.
I really hope this conversation has inspired you to give so much of your gift to the world that it expands you into your greatest possible version of yourself. Remember, it's not selfish just because we also benefit from it. And here's where I get to make a selfish request. New podcasts need all the help they can get. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate the show and subscribe to us on your favorite platform. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Selfish Gift Podcast. And send me a DM. I'd love to hear how you're sharing your gift with the world.